In an extended season of 60-plus racing adventures, it's time to crown a champion at the Hockenheimring. For drivers 60 years of age or over, this is the super unique iRacing League for drivers that age, where they have great competition, great respect, great camaraderie, and we look forward to putting on the great racing for you here on RaceSpotTV as we bring you live coverage for the final races of this round of 60-plus racing adventures. An extra long iRacing Season 4 gives us an extra long 60-plus racing adventures season. David Haynes here with Jake Sperry to bring you live coverage from the Hockenheimring. There's the Jim Clark Memorial outside of Turn 3. Many things to spot around here at Hockenheimring as we go racing. This is what season 32, yes 32, of this long-running iRacing League has looked like. It started back in September at Road America. They've been to Spa-Francorchamps, Silverstone, Sebring, Fuji. We last brought you live coverage from Circuit of the Americas, and then they've been to Misano, Interlagos, Suzuka, Jerez, Imola, the Nürburgring, and they complete their German back-to-back legs here at round 13, the Hockenheimring. And the champion will be crowned. And these are the points. Greg Seitz ahead of John Payne, Ragnar Wisloff, Roberto Catalano, Paul Stump, Rob Cohen, Gerhardus Jorison, Russ Addy, Barry Hills, and John Morgan as our top 10 there. Greg Seitz, since turning 60 in the last 2 years and joining 60-plus racing adventures, has been an incredibly dominant force in this championship. Today is his day to put a little bit of icing on that cake and bring the trophy home. We're racing with the Super Formula Lights cars across multiple seasons of 60-plus racing adventures. The open-wheel racing vehicle has changed, so at times it's been the US F2018, it's been the Star Mazda. We've had Formula 3. Now, in one of iRacing's most recent junior open wheelers, the Super Formula Lights. Interesting tyres that they are. Their preparation is oh so key as the drivers go qualifying.
Yeah, and it'll be an important qualifying, I'm sure, with everyone looking around at this Hockenheimring circuit. You have that sense of the old and the new, and I'm sure we're going to see that in a few moments.
So Barry Hills, the driver we're on board with right now, as he comes through the final sector of the lap, where the stadium and the fans get a great view from what in Germany they call Tribüne, which is grandstands. The timing line is right beside the most gigantic bottle of oil you've ever seen at the pit lane, and now the timing begins for Barry Hills. You got a little bit of downforce, you got plenty of grip in this junior open wheeler, and that's why they carry so much speed through turn 1, but then it's braking here and setting up your run onto what you want to call the back straight. Officially at Parabolica, it just keeps going towards the hairpin at the far end of the circuit. This is a place that you can slipstream, and your run onto this long full throttle blast is therefore so critical. You're looking, you're searching, where is my braking marker all the way down here for this big hairpin? Barry Hills decides it's about there, and I reckon it about was. He gets nicely to that apex and then opens the steering as he opens the throttle, and now you're in the back leg. Having gone away to the far side of the circuit from the pit lane, now you're making your way through all the curves and grandstands on your way back to the start-finish line.
Yes, and this is where we were talking about the difference between the old and the new. This track had a redo in the back end of 2001, start of 2002, and it's here where you enter the drag strip and across here into the arena section, which has remained largely unchanged here as you head through the long left-hander that leads towards the final section of the lap. You're looking over towards the Sud curve to end out the lap here at the Hockenheimring, and Barry Hills, I think, is just about finding that double apex here through the final section, which makes life incredibly awkward because you can't just go for one flowing motion. You've got to take that double go as you go around 131.1 there for Barry, which is good enough for him to jump up to the second row of the grid as things stands, which I think he'll certainly take in a heartbeat as he goes around. And here is Greg Seitz making his way up towards the fabled hairpin here of the Spitzkehre, one of the tightest hairpins that we have in iRacing.
And it's so wide on the entry but so tight at the apex that it's always a scene for just a little bit of ambition becoming destruction, particularly on opening laps of racing. Roberto Catalano, relatively recent driver to 60 Plus Racing Adventures, but you saw he's right inside of the top 5 of the points coming towards the end of the season here. So another good result could be great for Roberto. Not only the outright championship to think about, but also the Super 70s. And that's what it sounds like on the tin. If you're looking at 60 Plus Racing Adventures, it's drivers over the age of 70. And there's quite a few of them on iRacing as well, and in this league. So you're looking at the likes of me drawing a mental blank on who's always on the podium and always bagging Super 70s points. John Morgan it is that I'm thinking of. And here is your championship leader, Greg Seitz, coming out onto the racetrack.
Yeah, looking to try and get himself sorted. Of course, you had the old run, of course, to the Jim Clark chicane around this track, which really did separate the drivers in what was such a long circuit out there. But because of the length of the circuit, of the idle race you to this section of the track and back, it was very, very easy for security concerns and very disgruntled employees of certain German manufacturing companies to do with cars finding themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time. So that's why the circuit moved to a shortened layout. Of course, it did make life a little bit easier for the circuit, but that's something that we've seen. Ulf Olsen currently there in 8th position, just the 0.8 of a second off the pace, 0.3 off of Bob Cohen, which will be quite interesting to see how he goes, coming out then of turn 10 and heading over to the Mobile 1 curve here at turn 11. The committed right-hander, you've got to use all of the downforce available in the car, and then you head yourself then through the Sachs curve, which has been a maker or breaker in races past, present, and I believe they will make races break in the future as well. Just pulling it off then into pit lane, figuring that that lap wasn't going to be one that was necessary, and it looks like Greg in the 774 is looking to gear it up in the all chrome car.
10 minutes of qualifying where the drivers get 2 flying laps, so a lot of them will be complete by about this time in the session with only 3 minutes remaining. Not Greg Seitz. He's timed his run perfectly to the end of the session here, and he really threw it through turn 1 that time around. Comes towards this section of 3 apexes, and he's trying to maximize when he can get to throttle and how much speed he can carry out onto the Parabolica to the 774. There's 18 drivers with times. Greg Seitz is not one of them yet. John Morgan, Earl Setzer, and Gerhardus Jorrison also have not set qualifying times. John Morgan and Gerhardus Jorrison got out on track, but didn't set clean laps. So I wonder what part of the racetrack gave them some grief in qualifying and tripped them up. Was it track limits? Did they spin? Did they get too much curb somewhere? Greg Seitz is going to be trying to avoid all of those things in his first of 2 qualifying laps.
Yeah, he certainly will be, and he knows that if he doesn't get this one correct, he will have one more to go and wrangle about, but it will depend on the time he crosses the line, because if he is anything short of 1.5 minutes, he is going to be potentially in a little bit of trouble regarding where he can go and get one more lap in on the board. It looks like he should be okay in that regard, so I'm sure we're going to see where that time is going to go through. Ragnar Wisloff certainly, since we've been watching him this season, he's certainly been someone to keep a very close eye out on over these laps. And as he comes to the line, Greg Seitz will put a 1:30.7 down to start, so only good enough for 3rd position, and so a little bit more needing to be found on this 2nd lap, but he'll have the tyres more into the operating window that he wants them to, and the confidence will build on this 2nd lap through the Einfahrt Parabolica, and now heading over through the Parabolica back towards the Spitzkehrer.
What should we name the corner before Parabolica? I don't know. Beginning of Parabolica? Okay. Very, very German naming style going on, but this Spitzkehrer, I think that's where the action absolutely is in a race like this. These junior Formula open wheelers will slipstream each other very close. Whatever the car's been in 60 Plus Racing Adventures, there's always been a little bit of a slipstream to be had when you've got all of these aerodynamic devices, but not the 1,000 horsepower of a Formula 1 car. And so the run down the Parabolic will bring them together, and then the Spitzkehrer might bring them together. We'll wait and see. This is the second of 2 laps for Greg Seitz. It was purple in the first sector, a 10th faster than Ragnar Wisloff's pole. In the second sector, He's just a couple tenths behind the sector that Ragnar Wisloff got pole with. So it comes down to this final sector for Greg Seitz. If he can beat Ragnar Wisloff's sector time through here, then he can take pole, but he has not been Peter Perfect all the way through this. Sector 1, good. Sector 2, losing a little bit of time. Sector 3, to the timing. As we draw to a close on qualifying, Greg Seitz will improve, but by how much? Not enough to even jump a spot. Might have gone off track in sector 2.
He must have had an off track somewhere there.
Did we? I don't think we saw anything that looked like it. I don't remember seeing anything that looked like it. So maybe there is some interesting track limits around here, and it locks in Ragnar Wisloff as the pole sitter for race 1 of 2. Barry Hill's on the front row with him. It'll be a 2-wide rolling start for 60 Plus Racing Adventures. And Ragnar Wisloff and Barry Hills are going to be on the front row of the grid. Greg Seitz is going to start directly behind Ragnar Wisloff, but on the second row alongside Todd Scholl. And then Russ Addy and Roberto Catalano are going to be row number 3. There's Mike McCormick and Bob Cohen in 7th and 8th. Ulf Olsen in 9th. Greg Garris in 10th. Mike Grandy and Franz Josef Stum 11th and 12th. Peter Holstrom and Eugene Clark are on the next row together, and Steve O'Malley and Richard Coulomb are 15th and 16th. David Bradley's in 17th place. Oyvind Anderson in 18th. Ed Benson, 19th, is the last driver who set a qualifying time. John Morgan, Earl Setzer, Gerhardus Jorrison not able to do so. As we roll through the grid, one of the things you might have noticed is a couple of matching liveries. So I said the outright championship, we looked at the points. I mentioned Super 70s. There's also a teams championship, and with a bit of cooperation, some drivers who might not be in contention for any of those outright championships can put some good results together, some consistent results together, and challenge for that team's championship. So that's something that keeps them motivated, gives them someone to practice with.
Yeah, it certainly will give them someone to practice with, and that's the important thing. And there are your track conditions out there at the moment, 26 degrees. So I would say these are the ideal conditions here in iRacing to go out there and put the battle down as they get themselves sorted. They'll run through the arena to get themselves ready and going for their racing action. I'm sure they're going to be having a wonderful time through it as they exit Mercedes going through turn 10. This is a chance for them to get those tyres into an operating window if they would so much want to. You can see a few drivers liking the idea of weaving. The only thing they've got to be careful about is whether they damage the surface of the tyres too much by weaving. It's great to get the temperature in the tyres. Yes, it's absolutely wonderful, but if you start damaging the surface of the tyre, David, you know, you're going to sit in a position where you are going to fade late in the race. So it's interesting to see that most of the front drivers, they've just decided, you know what, we'll take the bullet on cold tyres. We don't want to damage the tyre life over the course of the race.
Yeah, and it's a little bit narrower on the racetrack through here as well. We're too wide, so not a whole lot of space to do much weaving or anything. The width of the track does change a lot through some of the older sections, through some of the newer sections. We've got 19 laps of racing about to begin. The lap times that we've seen, therefore, should be around about 28 minutes or so. The pace car is in the field through the final corners next to the Southern Tribune, and Ragnar Wisloff is gone straight out of the gates. He's given himself a good lead. Too wide will be a difficult thing to achieve through this very sharp turn 1. High speed and bouncing across the curb. I think Ulf Olsen's gone for a spin and just nudged the barriers. So he was too optimistic, got too much curb. That's why some drivers backed out. That's why we had a lot of single file through turn 1. Now they have a chance to stretch their wings a little bit, particularly onto the parabolica here. Able to pick up a little bit of slipstream. Now you can go racing. But for Ulf Olsen, he's shown why lap 1 can be very, very difficult.
Yeah, especially at the Nord curve where it is a very committed corner. It is not even 90 degrees as you fly on through, and the curve is very much going to be on the big issue that these drivers were looking at. Greg Seitz getting clear, then down at the Spitzkehrer to get past Barry Hills. That puts him up into second position, but with Ragnar Wisloff already 1.3 seconds down the road, I think it's quite telling. Here comes Mike Grandy, hoping to find his pass in the mock-up pass, and he won't quite get the place he wants.
He's +3 already. He was trying to muscle his way through Spitzkara hairpin. They were side by side through there, and it's running wide off of there. You could maybe run out of some track limits. Now it's another place where the track gets narrower. You've got to be careful with the curbs on the way into here as well. And so on that opening lap, Greg Seitz gaining a spot, Mike Grandy gaining 3 and looking for more, and Ulf Olsen dropping back 12. John Morgan with no qualifying time might have even started from the pits as we've come around to complete the first lap. Ragnar Wisloff with a 1.5 second lead. Greg Seitz is now in position to get comfortable and look to chase him down.
Yeah, this is a chase game, and you got to be all set up. Barry Hills going around. The Nord curve strikes again, and you're going to be seeing that quite a lot here, and it's going to be a long wait for him to go back up into a position where he can go and attack. He drops all the way back down to 20th place looking for the rejoin, and then everyone else will now just scuttle their way on through. And this is what we're going to be seeing quite a lot over 19 laps here, this drafting train, which is becoming a very important one to keep in mind as they now hit the brakes through. Mike Grandy around the outside here of Roberto Catalano, looking at Mike McCormick as well potentially for the move, and they will duel their way over towards the Mercedes corner. Just about enough clearance for McCormick to take the line he wants, but Grandy does not give this up, and looking on that inside line, he'll now have to go around the outside here of turn 10 if he wants to make this happen. In fact, he tries to dance on the inside, little bit of a wiggle there in front from McCormick, and Catalano has just gone screaming off the circuit and has got by them both.
Yeah, there was a bit of contact, so trying to go over under. One got the nose to the tail of the other, cost him a lot of time. Roberto Catalano said, I think I'll use all the space available, and there is exactly how lethal some of the curbs are if you bottom out these low-riding cars and then you go spinning around and losing all of those positions. So for the teammates, it's been very difficult there. Anglo Dutch Racing, Barry Hills, Gerhardus Jorrison. And the lead for Ragnar Wisloff's had 2 or 3 tenths taken out of it on this lap. Greg Seitz slowly motoring his way up towards the race lead, as inside the mid-pack of the field has been this just unbelievable racing. Roberto Catalano, super opportunist there. McCormick and Grandy have similar speed and have just been going back and forth. They were side by side on lap 1, they've been side by side on lap 2. Now it's lap 3. Any predictions for the trend?
No side-by-side, I reckon. I don't think that we're going to be seeing it this time. So here's the brakes, and there's a little feign of defence there on the inside by Mike McCormick, but again, he's able to scrabble back to where he wants to on the exit, taking that title line, and then he'll start thinking about, well, okay, do I have the clearance here heading over towards the section that I love? And the answer is Mercedes. No, for Mike Grandy, you'll just have to fall into line this time. You can't make the move every lap. It's not impossible to make a move every lap, it's just very improbable. And I think you're really starting to see here the difference of where everyone is looking around at everyone else, because suddenly they're bringing Greg Garris into this group, and now instead of it being just a group out there, which was they're riding on its own, and there's the contact, was trying to save a spin was Mike Grandy, and there's more contact for Eugene Clark, who goes scrambling across the rallycross area trying to get back onto circuit. A disaster there coming out to the Sachs curve.
Mike Grandy gets a little bit too much curb, has a slide, locks the tyres up, and then gets clipped by 2 cars coming through by the looks of things. So for Mike Grandy, it's just a little mistake from him. Oh, Eugene Clark. Looks like he might have sustained quite a bit of damage from that. Or even Anderson and Mike Grandy are in the pit lane, but not Eugene Clark. So we'll see if that suspension holds up. But it's just the little mistakes in this pack that then compound into bigger things. Underneath a second for the race leaders, and it's because Eugene Clark hasn't even been able to make it to the pit lane.
Yeah, the damage there would have probably been too much to deal with, and as such, that's going to be the end of that for him. So more to be done when race 2 comes along, but at least on race 1, here comes the search from Ulf Olsen on the recovery, around the outside of Ed Benson, and Benson right now will be looking around, spying whether he can have any way to go forward, and the answer is no, because he'll have to look behind, because suddenly he has brought Richard Coulomb into play. So Coulomb now wants to try and get himself a way through and gain an extra place, but for the moment 13th and 14th, that's where the battles are, and behind that as well 16th and 17th looks like John Morgan has a recovering Barry Hills.
Yeah, this is the group right now, 12th through to 17th. You see them all through the older stadium section. Your favourite bit at Mercedes is a little bit newer, but has a similar feel to extending this part of the lap, where you can go side by side for a little bit, and a great view of the grandstands. So this is another lap completed. Gap for the race lead staying similar, and it's inside of the midfield that we're looking at a few drivers who didn't qualify well to try to gain some spots.
Yep, they're trying to, and here it goes for the podium as Russ Addy has been quietly working about here, thinking, well, how do I get past Todd Scholl for position? Scholl batters the anti-cut curb and those dipped curbs that they've got here around this circuit. That increased drainage in the middle of the curb, basically creating a V-curve that you got there on the outside of the corner. It is very aggressive and attackable, the curbs here over at the Hockenheimring, so you can go out there and really try and go for it, but the way they try and mitigate you overextending around what is a relatively flat circuit here in Germany is that they do put the anti-cut curbs sometimes on the outside, just enough to make you second guess whether you want to start damaging the floor or not. Dancing through the chicane now, looking over towards the Sud curb, which is of course the final corner out on circuit, dancing around with that drag strip, which does get very oily out there on the outside in adverse weather conditions. We're in ideal ones at the moment. They stay as they are for the moment, but keep an eye on Greg Seitz, because he's pulled that gap down to about 9/10 of a second to Ragnar Wisloff.
Gets very, very slippery with Nico Hülkenberg tears out there on the drag strip outside of the final corners. It's another one of the battles we're going to be keeping our eye on. Hallström just in front of Greg Garris. Hallström's gained a few spots throughout this race.
Has done, and I'm sure that Hallström is hoping that it's going to be a little bit more right now. Steve O'Malley and co will be looking around. In fact, no, that's Greg Garris making the move through. So Garris will take that place away with a comfortable amount of pace. And speaking of changes out there, keep an eye out on Bob Cohen for a moment, because it looks like he is dropping down the timing sheet here, and is having a few issues out there on circuit. So he'll be able to try and get that sorted, hopefully in the not too distant future. But at least right now, it's Peter Hallström where we focus, and they are dealing with Ulf Olsen, who's starting to close that down in.
Now, the problem for Bob Cohen is that we couldn't keep an eye on him. It's borrowed Jake Sperry's computer maybe, but I think he's back and stayed in the race, having dropped for a little bit of time, and maybe even dropped some positions as that happened. So we don't know exactly what technical problems he might have had. But he's come back in 5th place.
Yeah, it is simply put away, and you do get troubles like that from time to time, and it's often, you look at it, it's internet connection to connection. It's one of the pitfalls that you find when you're online racing and you're trying to deal around with that issue. Or no, you could have the issue that you've just had to try and download Hockenheimring twice in order to get into the server. Thank you very much. But here comes a charge from Russ Addy, hoping that Todd Scholl is going to be complicit in this move, moving around the outside, hoping that this one's going to go through, as Barry Hills is down in the pit and comfortably gets on the brakes through the hairpin. But is there a switchback coming? That's going to be no. Easy one for Russ Addy as the lead comes down to under 6/10.
Barry Hills had a slowdown, didn't clear it in time. It ended up as a drive-through penalty, so I had to try to have a look. Where did he get that slowdown penalty? And it didn't immediately become apparent to me exactly where he got it. So maybe there's some very, very harshly enforced track limits somewhere, similar to how we saw a few times disallowed in qualifying, and we weren't quite sure. So that's a tough penalty for Barry Hills, and it takes him out of a great race that he was a part of. Sadly ahead of Todd Scholl here in a battle to stand on the podium, but the battle for the top 2 steps is just getting that little bit closer. Greg Seitz is right within slipstream range here, so everywhere that they're carrying some speed on the front straight, on the run up towards Einfahrt Parabolica, on the way along the Parabolica, Greg Seitz will be in place to try to attack on this lap.
Well, in any lap that he can, he'll be certainly hoping that he's got a way where he could make that move and do so without any dramas at all. And I think that's where we're going to be sitting down and saying, right, it's not a case of will he make the move, it might just be a case of when he decides to go and make that move, because he's got the gap down under a 1/10.5 currently at the moment, just sitting back behind Ragnar Wisloff, knowing he's got the pace, knowing it's taken him half the race to get onto the back, and now he can just pick and choose his moment. This is why he's got a 50-plus point lead here in the top of the standings, and is looking to just increase that further and confirm the championship the way that only he knows how. As we take that onboard look, dancing through turn 10 and over towards the Mobile 1 curve, which is at turn number 11. You really get a sense of how claustrophobic this section of track is. This is a wonderful bit of track that should never ever go away. It's tight, it's narrow, it's got the lovely on-camber Seitz curves as you go through. It dances like a roller coaster, and you feel like you're constantly on the edge of grip every time you go around. It's a nice meandering start to a lap around a circuit like this one. It's much more difficult when you get right down to the very end of the racing, when you go into the final section of the circuit here at the Hockenheimring.
It's Greg Seitz, about as close as he was a lap ago, biding his time. We haven't quite crossed the halfway point of this opening race just yet. This is where you expect to get a lot of advantage from the slipstream, and Greg Seitz he's 4 kilometers an hour, 5 kilometers an hour faster for a sustained bit of the racetrack, has just a look towards the inside, but doesn't look to push the issue just yet, as they cut that speed down from 245 k's an hour to apex speeds in the realm of 55 kilometers an hour. So a really big braking event. Seitz has gotten close, and now he's looking through some of these other parts of the racetrack to keep some pressure on Ragnar Wisloff, maybe look for a mistake. Wisloff had no mistakes in qualifying. He was really quick there, where Greg Seitz wasn't quite perfect in the qualifying, but now we're in the racing conditions, and Ragnar Wisloff might feel a little bit more pressure, and Greg Seitz might feel a little bit more free to move around in the mirrors, try a couple of different lines, and just stay there putting on pressure, because he's going to cross the start-finish line and have basically 10 more laps to be able to try to make this happen.
It's very loose from Ragnar Wisloff. He took about 2 bites entering in towards the Sud Curve corner. Now, we do have 2 cars in the pits who have come together. It's Øyvind Andersen and Gerhardus Jorgensen, who have both come together. I think it was Andersen who had the troubles, but there's another little feign for a move to the Einfahrt Parabolica at turn 2 and turn 3 and turn 4 they now go through, and this surely is where Greg Seitz now will uncork his move. Lap 10, he will find his solace of moving towards the race lead, dancing over to the outside, which turns to inside. Ragnar Wisloff knows they're exactly alongside. The only way he can beat him is by outbraking him through the corner, attacking off the exit, but it's just covered off in the middle. And 7.74, you add all the numbers up, you get 18. You take what he's been doing in terms of his 10 laps, he'll get to 8, and if he's lucky enough, he'll give 7 reasons to Ragnar Wisloff why he should lead this race, which puts him at number 1 as we take a look at all that.
So a similar incident to what we've seen before, drivers spinning through the Seitz curve, and then the driver behind running up them as they don't drive off the corner as expected. So a similar repeat to incidents we've seen previously, except even more dramatic with a bigger view of the sky and more damage done. You added up all of those numbers and it spells disaster for Ragnar Wisloff at Sacrifice. Greg Seitz leads the race now past the halfway point, and now it's Ragnar Wisloff's turn to feel how powerful that slipstream can be. Wisloff's run his nose in clean air the whole race to this point. It was all clean air in qualifying, of course. Now we're racing wheel to wheel. Things are always a little different in these junior Formula cars.
Yeah, they always are. Because when you sit down and you look at it, it's not a case of you've got the ability to run away all the time. It's limited on its power. You've got to be very reliant on the downforce that's generated. And around a circuit like this, where you've got the whole run of the parabolic back up to the Spitz carrier. You've always got a way to fight back as Ragnar Wislov now throws the car down to the inside. Greg Seitz leaves a lot of room on the outside, and that's the reason why, because he takes a big wide line, allows him to keep that natural run of putting the power down. He can attack off the exit. Not much that Ragnar Wislov can do about that. Greg Seitz is a very experienced character. They all are in this series, but here is someone who just knows all the tricks of the trade in terms of where he needs to place the car.
I spoke about the minimum speeds there, sub 60 kilometers an hour. So when you're so slow through the corner, getting to power, getting your traction well is so important there. And that's where having that little bit more space around the outside worked out well for Greg Seitz. Ragnar Wislov was even slower, almost parked the apex there. So Greg Seitz being able to power up to speed let him really punch away. But they're going to treat this maybe almost as the last day of school and have a good little race for the race lead. Plenty of other good battles through the fields as well. These have been your two in-form drivers across the last 5 seasons. They've taken basically all of the championships in 60-plus racing adventures. The arrival of Greg Seitz really made Ragnar Wislov have to work, and he's going to have to work maybe even just to stay with him at this point. So we're 5/10 back now. You see in the top left-hand corner of the screen as that time just slowly disappears. That's all the slipstream is worth for you. It'll let you stay close if your pace is similar enough, but you need to match what Greg Seitz is going to try to do.
Well, that's the thing. How do you match him? How do you find a way to just stave off any of the challenge that has been put on him? How do you get a way around? That's where you sit down and you look at what Ragnar Wislov has been able to do in this race. And he's been close. Yes, he's been very close. And speaking of issues of being close, that is a lack of a Richard Coulomb front wing. Currently for 17th position with David Bradley there, who's trying to find a way through on this battle. But it's not often that you see the front wing often drivers continuing like that. Richard Coulomb, not the sort of driver I'd have expected to have been caught up in anything super duper massive.
Well, it was the old Hockenheimring layout where you'd see them roll out super low downforce, low drag setups. Not this modern one. Doesn't appear to be affecting him as much as you would expect, but it is a clear piece of bodywork missing, and it won't be helping. And even psychologically, it won't be helping to have that kind of damage on. So with David Bradley just in behind.
Yeah, so as far as I can tell, it's been more than 5 laps that he's been stuck without that front wing. So it's been quite dramatic, actually, what he's been having to deal with. But it hasn't perturbed him. It hasn't stopped him at this moment. He's still taking the corners with a relative amount of pace. And he might be dealing with a lot of understeer off of some of the corners as he runs slightly wide here. But he's still got the mechanical grip to work with. And that's what he'll be responding with the car. He'll be dancing about on the pedals, trying to find where the limit's going to be, and effectively he'll have a car that's going to feel very heavy now on the front. It's going to be very difficult for it to want to turn in and to carry the speed that he wants to, and that's the struggle that he's got. As there goes the move by Greg Garris. Steve O'Malley, not much he can do.
So this is the fringes of the top 10, 8th, 9th and 10th. Franz Josef Sturm's gained 4 positions in this race. Greg Garris has gained 1, and probably from the DNF or issues of some of the other drivers like Barry Hills. And you have Steve O'Malley, who's gained 5 spots in this race. So his charge forward might be fruitful. But of the 3 of them, it's Greg Garris who has the fastest lap of the race. So maybe he's just coming into his own, and it was on the last lap. Has he maybe had a little bit of the toe from Franz Josef Sturm? Has he caught a little bit of Franz Josef Sturm? So you talked about at the very beginning on the formation lap how the drivers were treating their tyres is a thing we've had in this car and a thing we've had in Formula 3, that this length of race, if you really lean on the tyres the whole way, they will start to fade on you just a little bit by the final couple of laps.
Yeah, you can't really hope that when you're out out there on the circuit, you're desperately reliant on the tyres deciding that they don't want to be tyres anymore. You've got to look after them in terms of the race, because it's very much like having 4 pairs of shoes. And if you've got no soles on the end of your shoes, you're going to be looking a little bit silly as you walk around out there on the paddock. So that's where they sit at the moment, and the chance to make that move becomes once again very important, as Franz Josef Stumm just keeps himself nicely there in the number 34 machine, just dancing to where he needs to, Club Diat. So this will be as close of a home race that we'll see from him this season. And he was very early on to the brakes, but very aggressive through at the Spitzkehrer. Now, I find that quite interesting that he drives very paint by numbers around this track where he needs to. He will make sure he gets all the braking done, and when he feels like he can put the power down at the earliest opportunity, he will do, as here comes David Bradley in the number 72 car, and they are going to come together, feeds him a side pod and gets a move.
Yeah, David Bradley with a very, very good look, and Richard Coulomb not giving up on it, and a bit of a squeeze on the exit. We've seen plenty of drivers give room there, not quite enough in that case, but David Bradley stays ahead of Richard Coulomb, who already was missing his wing. I would guess, based on the BMW badge on the nose of Franz Josef Stumm, that he might be from somewhere a little further south in this nation than here at the Hockenheimring. You've got almost every other good German brand represented around here, with the Porsche Experience Centre and the giant Mercedes emblem on the grandstand. What we're missing is a bit of Audi and BMW around here. But they, as I say, are from a little bit further south in the country.
Well, they're hoping that there's more moves available on the horizon, and Garris has been someone who has been trying to find that way through and just isn't able to at this moment in time. That gap staying at around about a half a second here or there, and it does get difficult when you sit right down and say, you know what, how do I make this move? Because you are reliant on the slipstream here, but the more that you lean into that slipstream, so to speak here, David, the more that you're going to be struggling through what is surprisingly a very technical circuit where you do need all of the downforce available to you in order to find that pace. This is one of those Jekyll and Hyde style circuits where you need everything and you need nothing at the same time. On board with Greg Garris, taking the Sachs curve and now looking to attack through the chicane, and this is where you're trying to dance. You see they take that wide line, really trying to open out the final couple of corners, and Greg Garris, when he gets a little bit of air that he can try and channel his way through, it does look like he's quicker.
Yeah, some of these previous laps are just a little short of Greg Garris's best, so he's maybe encountering some dirty air, encountering a little bit of tyre heating from where he sits right now, and hasn't been able to make a move or anything. So he set that 31.0 as his fastest lap in the race. Then he had a 31.9, and then he had a 31.4, but now he's very close with Franz Josef Stumm, just the 0.3 back, really following in the slipstream now with 6 extra kilometers an hour. It is a powerful toe, but is it going to get him alongside in the braking zone? It's not. He looks to the inside, but he didn't quite have any overlap coming to the braking zone, so he didn't feel right to lock it up, barrel in there and cause an incident, and he sits behind Stummy for just another lap.
Well, you're running out of laps now, because you'll be down to 3 laps by the time that you cross the line, and he's now starting to get a little bit aggressive at different areas of the track there as we take a look at what happened to Bob Cohen, and that's why we had a bit of smoke down there, losing the back end through that section, and that's cost him Roberto Catalano in terms of places. So Bob Cohen has just lost his top 5 place, and now he'll be sat in 6th, and he's looking around at Mike McCormick, who's a couple seconds adrift of him. So that'll be his worry for the final few laps, but again, it remains close here for Greg Garris. The number 9 car in position number 9 is hoping that he can find a way up into P8, but don't count Steve O'Malley out. I think he's been biding his time, waiting for a moment to strike. He looks the closer of the 3 drivers who's going to try and make a move.
Yeah, just having a look at the moment, Steve O'Malley. And so what they don't want to do is throw too much away in race 1, with race 2 still to come, and about to get 2 laps to go from the leaders, and then these drivers about 30 seconds behind Greg Seitz and Ragnar Wisloff. Here is Greg Garris needing to defend somewhat from Steve O'Malley, and Garris works his way through the corner well. He really straightens it up early to get on throttle, and that allows him to motor off ahead and stay ahead at the moment, but let Francois Sturm get just a tiny bit further away. This is Steve O'Malley's view. It's not an incredible view when you see the hands come across the mirrors there, the halo across as well. But when you think about where the driver is looking at any given time, then when the left hand's up, you're looking to the right.
Certainly are. You're trying to make sure that you can see over the top of the steering wheel, for example, and give yourself a way of really giving as much to see as possible. The element of safety is rather important out there, and so some drivers turn that off or even can make that invisible through the middle, which is one of the fantastic joys of sim racing, is that you've got different ways of trying to go for it. Wide goes Greg Garris, hoping for his way to try and scramble on by and into the Einfahrt Parabolica. Now these three go. They are starting to drop now, Steve O'Malley, because I think Greg Garris is winding this up, and I would say here, David, that he's in range.
Range also needs you to be pretty gutsy, but I think he is going to have some overlap before the braking zone, and that's what matters, is to be there right before the brake, and then he's going to be very tight to the apex here, but manage to stay ahead. As if anything, Francois Sturm picks up a little bit of understeer. Steve O'Malley gets a little bit of the curb there. They're starting to maybe fatigue just a little bit, and Greg Garris goes to 8th. We take the offset look from Francois Sturm.
You really get a sense of how much he is driving this car. You really get a sense as he runs on in through the corners, how he's got to try and get this dancing on a line if he's trying to chase this down. It's very much by the book, down to the inside of the Seitz curve. Now trying to take the path of least resistance through this entire section. He's been doing a very good job. We have just ticked over to start the final lap of this race. It's been a difference maker of 1.7 seconds for a driver who has been nigh on impossible to stop, and that of course has been Greg Seitz, who is there with Ragnar Wisloff in second position. And for Greg Seitz, he has been someone who is, I would say, the happiest that you can possibly be. He has outdriven everybody in this race, and he's proven why he is a worthy champion.
Yep, he's driven through the field to pick up just a couple of positions after that qualifying, and he has the fastest lap of the race. He has the lead, and a win here will absolutely crown him 60-plus Racing Adventures champion. An extended season, 13 instead of 12 rounds, and across them all, Greg Seitz has picked up the most points. And at the Hockenheimring, he's going to pick up another win. Greg Seitz is the race winner, and Greg Seitz is the season 32 60-plus Racing Adventures champion.
It's dominant. It's just absolutely dominant from Greg Seitz, and you can't look at it any other way except that he's had a fantastic job. Ragnar Wisloff will take second. Russ Addy will cross the line with third place, but we've still got great battling towards the end, all the way back here with Ed Benson, who is now looking around at John Morgan for position, because Mike Grandy has made his way back on through to gain a place. But Morgan here, he's going to need a great arena section.
Yeah, there's still a couple of battles through the field that we're going to watch on this final lap. It's like Ed Benson and John Morgan. Elf Setzer and Peter Hallstrom a tiny bit further back. And even Richard Coolum under pressure from Barry Hills, you never know. It's Ed Benson. Just got to hold on in this position. Got the ice hockey livery going on, so pretty sure Carolina Hurricanes are NHL. And he's going to cross the line there in 13th. Having gained a couple of positions across this race. John Morgan as well. Often we see him contending for the podium. He's been having some computer troubles by the look of things. Not quite able to race how he'd like in this one. But again, it's a clean slate with a fresh qualifying and a brand new race for race 2 when we get there as well. So keep an eye on who can adjust and look more comfortable in race number 2. Greg Seitz in the end with the fastest lap of the race and a race win of almost 2 seconds from Ragnar Wisloff. Russ Addy in third there, just ahead of Todd Scholl. Roberto Catalano, the opportunist at a couple of points, takes 5th. from Bob Cohen, Mike McCormick, Greg Garris, Francois Sturm, and Steve O'Malley as our top 10. Ulf Olsen finished in 11th after the lap 1 spin, another driver that we could expect improvement from in race number 2 because his qualifying was good. His way of attacking turn 1 on lap 1, less so. Mike Grandy, Ed Benson, John Morgan, Earl Setzer, Peter Holstrom, David Bradley, and Richard Coulomb, the last of the drivers on the lead lap. We did see some damage, some drivers who had to pit, some drivers who had to retire. So it's 1 lap down Barry Hills, 1 lap down his teammate Gerhardus Jorison. Oyvind Anderson had to tow. He couldn't even drive it into pit lane with the steering damage that he had. And Eugene Clark also 1 lap down in the 22nd position as he had to drive through pit lane for some repairs as well. There's Greg Seitz. And what a race win he's had, and what a championship, a season that he's had as well. We'll get to chatting with some of our drivers. So Greg Seitz joins us, and we say a big hearty congratulations. Season 32, it's a big crown on your head.
Yeah, it was a really good season. Lots of good competition. Ragnar was really tough this race. And then sorry to see that John wasn't here because he was pretty close to me in the championship. So, yeah, had a good time.
I think the discussion point every time around this season is the new car, the Super Formula Light. It might not feel new after 13 weeks, but it's certainly something to adjust to and really flavors the character of the racing, how important qualifying is, how you manage tires, everything. It comes down to the car.
Yeah, and it's a car that I really like. It handles the curbs really well, as opposed to like I drove the F4 season as well, and that car is just much more skittish over things. So I think this car is really adaptable, and yeah, you really kind of feel where the car is. It's great in kind of both low speed and high speed. So yeah, I think it's a car that's matched me really well.
Qualifying for this race 1, your second lap looked like it might have been able to take you to pole, and it didn't quite work out. What were the challenges of qualifying? What did we learn from that?
I ran off the track in turn 1 on the second lap, so I think my time would have been there, but yeah, it doesn't really count if you don't keep it on the track. So that's the lesson learned. Keep the car on the track.
Very important lesson for all of us. There were a few other drivers that went out on track and didn't get qualifying times. So it was obvious that something was challenging the drivers around here. We've seen a slowdown penalty or 2 in the race as well. Working your way through the field, how easy or difficult is passing this track, this car?
I think this track makes it fairly easy to pass if you can kind of be close enough to the guy ahead of you going onto the back straight, because it's such a long run that you have plenty of time to kind of use that draft. I was picking up about 2 or 3 tenths of a second in that stretch on the lap that I passed Ragnar. So yeah, it makes it a little easier to pass, but it's one of those tracks that's very high speed, a lot of high speed turns. There's a couple hairpins, but for the most part, it really rewards just pushing the car right to the limit, especially turn 1. Turn 1 is really tricky. I mean, to stay on track, and it always feels like the car wants to kind of let go on the back end if you get it wrong. So it's a little bit of a hair-raising moment sometimes.
Greg, our congratulations once again on a really successful season. Are we going to see regular race 1 winner Greg Seitz in race 2?
Yeah, I'll probably start a little bit further back like I usually do if I take the first one, since the championship's all decided. The next one's really just for fun. But yeah, Ragnar is really fast here, so I don't think it's going to be easy to catch him if I start too far back.
Best of luck, and again, our congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, you guys.
It's Greg Seitz joining us post race 1 with race 2 still to come. Jake Sperry will continue our way with the podium.
Absolutely, Ragnar Wisloff here with us here, second position overall. Now, Ragnar, you had the ability to jump away quite early in the race. Nothing really too much to worry about for you in the 30 car with the pole position, but it took about 10 laps and he found the back of you and then he found the way through. Just talk us through your opening laps of the race and trying to build that gap and seeing it slowly wilt away.
Well, you say I didn't have anything to worry about. Except for Greg Seitz, I guess. We know how quick he is, so he was eating away slowly. I thought it would be quicker than that, but then once he passed me, then was inching away again. A tenth, 2 tenths, 3 tenths. It's been like that for a while, so we sort of expect it. But it was a good race. It was fun. It's good to be able to keep up with Greg, just about. And so I had fun.
Well, it's very important to have fun. That's the first thing that we do in league racing like this. But in terms of how your season's gone from start to finish, where do you feel like you've improved on last season, and where do you feel like you've still got places to build on?
Well, this is an interesting question. I think quite a few of us still are struggling a little bit to get to grips with this super grippy car. It's got so much grip, and most of us have driven cars with probably a little less downforce than this, so it just takes a little while to get used to the fact that you can punish it quite hard. And so because you don't do that, then your lap times are maybe lacking 2 tenths, 3 tenths, and that's half a tenth in a few corners, and that's it. But I've concentrated on my braking this season. I think looking at my traces, I think that's better. But still a way to go to be able to keep up with Greg.
Well, you got one more race to try and prove it, and we've seen how difficult it was in race number 1. So for you in race 2, the opportunity to spend the final 9 laps of the race behind him, having a look at sort of how he was driving and what he was able to do out there with his racing. What did you pick up in terms of the main area of the circuit where maybe you were losing a tiny bit of time by comparison?
He brakes later and he turns in later. I just can't do that. I've tried a few times and I just can't follow his lines. So he's later on the brakes, he's later in, and then he's earlier on the throttle coming out of it. But it's not huge distances. It's a car length there and a car length there. But it's enough over a 19-lap race to be a couple of seconds ahead in the end. So, sorry.
So it's absolutely fine. Go on.
No, it was nothing. So, but, we'll keep chipping away at it. But, you're dealing here with a group of people 60 years of age plus. So it's not as easy to try to change things as it was when you're 18. But still, we keep trying.
You absolutely do. And that's what we love to see. Ragnar Wisloff there joining us, second position overall.
Thank you.
That's bad news for me because I haven't been able to change any of my bad habits since I was 18. So thanks, Ragnar. But we'll continue to move down the podium because third place, Russ Addy, joins us. Well, congratulations on another season, Russ, and gaining a couple of spots across this first of 2 races from the Hockenheimring.
Why, thank you. Yeah, it was kind of a surprise, honestly. I didn't practice very well, and I had told Ragnar there's no way I'll be doing an interview. So I left my good suit at home.
Oh, no. Rocking the mobile on the side pods of your livery, but it's Raven Earl here at the Hockenheimring that they've got that gigantic bottle of oil over the pit lane. Are you looking at that, or are you looking at your lines for turn 1, which seem to challenge people?
I'm looking at my lines, and I was watching the mirror. Todd was all over me and kept the pressure on the whole race, so that was my concern. Ragnar and Greg were off in the distance, so I didn't worry about that too much.
Any other corners around here that you found particularly challenging, either to nail that 10th in qualifying or to do consistently for 19 laps of racing?
The hairpin at the end of that, I guess, I don't know if it's back straight, the back left curve there. I'd pick up a little time through 1 on Todd, and then I'd lose it all back under braking just to be careful. I'd gone off a bunch of times there in practice.
Certainly from the highest speed to the lowest speed, a really, really big braking zone there. And Greg and Ragnar were discussing the braking and their differences, and maybe that's one of the things that people are struggling to maximize in this car, and struggling to match Greg Seitz. He's the champion.
Yeah, I don't worry about it. I don't worry about him anymore. I figure he'll be champion for a while until we find the new hot shoe.
Until someone else turns 60.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Although John Payne wasn't here today, and he's usually very quick. He's gotten much quicker this season.
Do you think that the car has helped some other people sort of look top 3 when maybe they were sort of top 10 in the Formula 3, or there are people with just slightly different habits, driving styles that this car works for?
Yeah, it's possible. I think that this car feels different, runs different. You kind of got to approach it a different way. So I know if John Morgan and I have taken a little while to kind of come to grips with it, but I'm starting to get a little bit more comfortable. It's a tougher car because it's got so much grip that right up to the edge, and then you lose it and you fly off. So I think it's been a little bit tricky for everyone to get used to.
And what should we look out for in race 2? I'm wondering if you've learned anything about how hard you can lean on the tires and them still be good on lap 19.
Well, I'd say I just watched for my victory when I beat Greg. Just kidding. No,
I'll be watching very closely.
No, I think just be steady. You got to use the curbs, but not too much. So I know there's some people that are hitting the curbs and losing it, and that's the tricky thing is to use as much curb as you dare.
Okay, we'll keep an eye out for that in race number 2, and we wish you the best of luck and congratulations, 3rd place in race 1.
Well, thank you, and thanks for broadcasting. As I said, I always do well when you broadcast, at least usually. I'll see you guys.
Every time that we talk, you get to say it because you've been on the podium and we're broadcasting. It's a bit of a survivorship bias on that one, Ray.
That's right. Okay, hope to talk to you guys again.
All right, see ya. Best of luck.
See ya.
There we go, our podium from the Hockenheimring. Greg Seitz, race winner and champion. Ragnar Wisloff, 2nd place from pole position, just not the race pace that Greg Seitz is able to extract. He knows what he's missing. He just can't grab it by all accounts. And then Russ Addy, pretty pleased to be 3rd place. There's still a race to come, but there's a break before 60 Plus Racing Adventures qualify and take race 2. So stay with us, because when we return, more RaceSpotTV coverage of 60 Plus Racing Adventures. It'll be their final race of the final round of the season 32 60 Plus Racing Adventures. We're back for one last race of 60 plus racing adventures in season 32 at the Hockenheimring. You're watching live on RaceSpotTV with David Haynes and Jake Sperry, Hugo Lewis in the production. What a beautiful racetrack it is. There used to be a lot more of it further to the east there. This is the most modern of the Grand Prix layouts. That's what we're racing on today as the drivers qualify to set the grid for race 2 this round.
There's a wonderful bit of qualifying going on here, David. I think that what we are going to be starting to see is who is wanting to step up their pace, who's going to find that bit more out there. Todd Scholl, I think, is the one driver who is stepping up now to 130.9. He'll be quite happy with that as an initial time. But when you're looking around and saying, well, what do you need to do? Where do you need to be out there? The thing that I noticed the most about qualifying is that Greg Seitz likes to wait. And that is, I will see what everyone is doing. I will see what everyone's been able to scramble about and get in terms of time. A little bit different when you know that you got a time that you got to go out there and beat, rather than I've just got to set the fastest time imaginable.
So we've got a lot of drivers having completed a qualifying lap, or at least 13, 14 of them. Here's Greg Garris, he's 5th at the moment. He has a purple final sector, and it moves him just up into 4th as Russ Addy goes to the top with his time, and then Ragnar Wisloff eclipses that, still a 10th of a second short of the pole time from race 1.
Yeah, and that's going to be rather important to keep in mind. The conditions haven't moved, so they are exactly the same. So this is about purely finding that pace and seeing Ragnar Wisloff then up there with a 30.5. That will still be a smile. Catalano goes second fastest, and here comes Mike McCormick, hoping that his number 99 car is going to find itself to the top. And the answer is Todd Scholl goes second, and Gerhardus Jorgensen goes up to 3rd place. Mike McCormick can only find P12. Great time by Gerhardus Jorgensen. He has found what he has needed to after what was a very tough opening race of the night for him.
So it's 17 drivers with qualifying times at the moment. Greg Seitz, none just yet. Ragnar Wisloff, Todd Scholl, Gerhardus Jorgensen, and Roberto Catalano as the top group. Barry Hills and Ulf Olsen also still out on track. I think it's a slow-paced in-lap for Barry Hills, and for Ulf Olsen, well, it's just about matched his PB in the first sector. We're about to see the second sector split, depending on exactly how you divide it all up, but that's rolling at the moment. 44 seconds was his PB, so it's a timing line out of this corner here before we go into the true final sector of the lap. Another 10th of a second loss there, so for Ulf Olsen, this isn't trending to better his qualifying time. It's just a 10th short. This is where we saw some drivers make some mistakes, as it may be where we're going to see Ulf Olsen make a mistake. A few drivers losing traction, rear traction, and spinning through the left-handed hairpin at Sachs Curve. Ulf Olsen's going to practice his pit entry.
Yeah, he'll hope he doesn't have to do that over the course of the race. Of course, these are sprint races, and you don't want to dive into the pits, but sometimes it's worth it if time's not going to improve. But where's this guy going to go? Greg Seitz, because he sits down, and he is the best out there in the 60-plus racing adventures. Every time he goes out there, he smiles and says, this is going to be my day. And 9 times out of 10, it normally is. Dancing through now towards the Sud curve out on track, which ends the lap, and the climb up towards the Nord curve. First lap time then strikes. It's a 31.1, which puts him down with another Greg Garris. So it's Greg's in 8th and 9th, which makes me a little bit hungry, but at least for this point in time, Greg is going to need to find a way to move up a little bit more. 0.6 of a second as he gets into a window.
I need to unpick just a little bit of British culture where it differentiates from my own. You putting sauce on those sausage rolls? If yes, what?
Normally no. I'm not putting sauce on the sausage roll, but if you do, it's brown sauce.
Interesting. The things you learn. It's Ragnar Wisloff, the fastest driver in all sectors. His pole after this, and Greg Seitz, the champion-elect, will be starting out at 9th. We go racing for another 19 laps of the Hockenheimring. My dad likes to make some sausage rolls. I'll be putting tomato sauce, maybe even mayo on that.
certainly going to be a case of, well, can you just hold the mustard in terms of Greg Seitz's lap? Because he's going to be trying to look at it. He's all over the curb there, heading out of turn 10, entering now through Mobile 1 and attacking the arena section. He needs to attack this section of the circuit. He knows how important it is to get the lap time in. He has to fight the car through the middle of the corner just to get it to sit down on the apex. It's trying to scramble away at every given opportunity. 0.6 of a second down currently. He's hoping that this lap is going to improve. Oh, he nearly clocked it as he went on by 1:31.3. It shows you how hard he was looking for it. Greg Seitz is going to have to start this one from P9.
I don't think there were any accidents there. I think Greg Seitz knows what he's doing. We spoke to him after race 1. We've seen him a couple of seasons now, so very, very close to locking in the whole grid. I think this is Barry Hills on an in-lap. They don't have to do an in-lap after their 2 qualifying laps. Some drivers like to for various reasons, either still to just get a little bit more practice or to practice their pit entry or just as something to do as we count down the clock to race 2 beginning once again. It's the same settings, same weather, same everything as race 1. It will be 19 laps.
Yeah, so it's a case of you put the points together and you hope you get the best possible result from it. So Greg Seitz, who is down there in the order, he's got work to do. But you look around and Ragnar Wisloff will be happy. Todd Scholl will be very happy with the qualifying effort. And I think the biggest driver who will have quite a smile is Gerhardus Jorgensen as we head over to the grid.
We do. Ragnar Wisloff has pole. Todd Scholl has the front row with him. That's a really good time, honestly, from Todd. And Gerhardus Jorgensen and Roberto Catalano are the second row. Catalano finished 5th in race 1. Now he starts 4th in race 2. Russ Addy had to make a couple of positions to get on the podium in race 1. He's going to have to do the same again, starting out of 5th alongside Barry Hills. Bob Cohen and Greg Garris are the next row. There's Greg Seitz and Franz Josef Sturm inside of the top 10. How about a row of some drivers who'd like race 2 to go better for them than race 1? Ulf Olsen and Eugene Clark are 11th and 12th. And then there's Mike McCormick and Mike Grandy for 2 mics in the mix there. John Morgan and Earl Setzer, David Bradley and Peter Hallstrom. And who's the last driver with a qualifying time? It was maybe even Peter Hallstrom. So Richard Coulomb and Jerry Kerr, I think, didn't set one. We still might see them start on the grid.
Yeah, there'll be positions 19 and 20 with the lap times that they weren't able to set. And so as such here, David, and for those of you who don't know out here in iRacing, it doesn't matter whether you're in an official server or you are in a league, the tiebreaker for if you do not set a qualifying lap time, believe it or not, is your iRating. So if you've got more iRating than a different driver, you get a better grid slot on the grid than those behind if you fail to qualify.
Can be a big thing at the Nürburgring where drivers can struggle to qualify around that massive lap. You get a lot of races that are split by iRating there.
Oh, you absolutely do, and I think it's one of the small quirks that I think drivers will certainly keep in mind as they go through, but they will have half a lap of their warm-up to get themselves sorted behind the iRacing Porsche safety car, which is there out in front in all of its smile and glory as they are now all looking pretty much set. 2 minutes have clicked on through, which means that Richard Coulomb will start from the pits. This is a driver's eyes perspective in terms of what work they have to do in order to go forward. I tell you what, I do love the nice tiny little bits of detail, for example, like the accreditation sticker on the underside of the halo.
Yeah, there are some interesting little details in iRacing that you come and find, like the McLaren GT4 has 2 dashes. There's the road car dash and the motorsport dash, and the motorsport dash is in front of the road car dash, so you can't see the road car dash from the driver's seat, but it's still animated.
Well, that's what you look for, and especially I think it's something that, especially when you've got sim racing like this, David, is one of the few things that you look at and smile with if you've got relaxed camera views. I think that's something there. John Morgan has also decided, by the way, to start from the pit, so we've got 18 drivers going at it from the get-go, and 2 who will be making sure they get a nice top off before they go.
Yeah, that's the aim. The stands are full from qualifying now to the race. We're ready to go. It's 19 laps, not expecting any pit stops except for damage, which necessitated 5 or 6 drivers to run through pit lane and pick up their fast repair, their spare car, if you will, in race number 1. Everyone, though, might have learnt a little from race number 1 about where the limits of the grip are, where you can race, where you can pass. See, for race 2 is a little sloppier as they let their hair down, or a little tidier as lessons have been learnt. Ragnar Wisloff's on pole for the second time in these 2 races, but he doesn't get out to quite the same lead as he did in race number 1. He can't take the full racing line in towards turn number 1, where a few of them have to be careful, and he's spun out. He's around. The pole sitter's in the wall.
Just like that, that's huge off of the start for Ragnar Wisloff, and it's cold tyres off the start of a race like this that you've got to be so switched on for. He flew through the opening corner and just didn't have the grip in the rear to try and keep himself sorted. He's gone around. There's more troubles with Ulf Olsen, and it looks like Mike Grandy has been caught up with it, just exiting the Einfahrt Parabolica. So very quickly we're finding out that race 2 is going to be a little bit more dramatic as everyone fights for a bit of real estate, and Mike Grandy, I think, was just being a little bit too cheeky with the way he was trying to go through down the inside, and that's cost his race. Scholl leads, Catalano in second, and here's Gerhardus Jorgensen trying to find a way past Russ Addy for the last spot on the podium.
Maybe he's right. Things do go his way when he's commentating. Catalano's run wide. Club Italy driver challenging for the race lead there that he wasn't expecting on lap 1, I'm sure. And he's run just a little bit wide. It's Todd Scholl's race right now. Roberto Catalano, Russ Addy, Gerhardus Jorgensen, Greg Seitz made 4 spots on this opening lap. And at this rate, he'll be challenging for the lead before you know it, having started out in 9th place. Everyone struggling with the cold tyres, and maybe it's actually the other way around. The first race gives them too much confidence as they then sort of reset and have to relearn the cold tyres in race number 2. First lap completed. Ulf Olsen and Mike Grandy are on the pit lane. Ragnar Wisloff back in 15th. Sure, he must have picked up some suspension damage. Roberto Catalano is looking a little bit newborn deer here as well.
And let's just note that Greg Seitz has gained 4 places off the start from 9th up to 5th, and now make that 4th place because he's trying to go around the outside to pull this move off on Gerhardus Jorgensen. He's got his teammate Barry Hills behind him, and Barry had a very nice run through the opening race before he ran into trouble, but why not? Let's go 3 wide as we head to the Spitz Care, and now they're going to have to leave each other just enough room. Seitz is the earliest on the brakes, throwing it down the inside. He's trying desperately not to tangle, and he doesn't. Oh, Barry Hills, he's made 2 for the price of 1.
Teammates Barry Hills and Gerhardus Jorgensen, we talked about what a horrible, rough race 1 they had. Well, it could go downhill from here, but they are racing and racing fiercely for the top 5. It's bringing a few other drivers into contention here. There's Bob Cohen and Greg Garris on the back of this as Greg Seitz splits the teammates. Ragnar Wisloff, where did it go wrong? For the back-to-back pole sitter, it doesn't even look like he got too much curb. It just looks like he asked too much steering angle to stay off of the curb. A little bit of banking through here as we go side by side. Greg Garris just behind as Bob Cohen's trying to gain some spots. Great qualifying from Gerhardus Jorgensen, but he's slipping a few spots as we go on.
Yeah, he's starting to struggle. We have seen, noted the change, that Russ Addy was through on Roberto Catalano, and we might need a replay of it because he did it at the Mercedes corner and he did it around the outside of Catalano there. Here's what happened with Ulf Olsen. You can see there was initial contact, and basically Mike Grandy just decided, I'm just going to keep the foot on the throttle and I'm just not going to lift it, and please leave me some room, and no one did.
Yeah, so a few little bits of contact, and then, yeah, like you said, Grandy coming across the grass, more contact with Olsen. A few other drivers had to pit. Ragnar Wisloff drove it to pits. Olsen and Grandy towed it to pits. Richard Coulomb has just driven it to pits for the second time. We're battling on the brakes into the hairpin as Bob Cohen looks to be the wizard around the outside once again. He gets good traction there, trying to fend off Gerhardus Jorgensen. Greg Garris looks for an opportunity. Mike McCormick's made some spots on these opening laps, and Franz Josef Sturm is inside of the top 10, closing in on this battle as well. Cohen sits in 6th for the minute.
Well, it's not quite Wizard of Oz. I'd say it's Wizard of Bob, and it was a very good run. Now, here's this move by Russ Addy. Look at the commitment into the corner. Around the outside, left just enough room to try and make that pass. And Russ Addy, I think, is having a big smile. The only issue he's got is about 2.25 seconds down the road is Todd Scholl, and he's going to now have to try and do his level best to catch him up over the course of this race. Bob Cohen looks around, Gerhardus Jorgensen behind him, Greg Garris behind that, and then you got Mike McCormick and Franz Josef Sturm, and Eugene Clark, I believe, has just gone around heading towards the Sud curve.
He's dropping down the timing order, so I'd say you're right on that one. A few drivers pick some spots from him, and we've seen drivers spin commonly in that area.
It's easy to do. You're looking at the balance of the car, and this is where you need it the most, because you've got that transfer of the left to right as you go through the chicane section, running up over towards the right before the Sud curve, and it is very easy just to over-tip the car because you are trying to dance on the brakes, and the way to get quicker and quicker is to deal with a trail brake, almost use these like carts, and that's very much the same. Franz Josef Sturm down the inside at the Spitzkehrer. That's as nice of a move as you're going to find. That was an easy paint-by-numbers style move, and that's what you call the bread and butter basics.
Battles all through the field right now, except for the lead as Todd Scholl holds that down by 2 seconds ahead of Russ Addy. Roberto Catalano in the third place at the moment. It's behind that where Greg Seitz is motoring up towards them, towards the podium positions, potentially towards the lead of the race. The pace that he's still got in his back pocket. Fastest lap of the race was set by him on the last lap, and he might improve yet more with a little bit of clean air. And then there's Barry Hills, and then there's Bob Cohen and Gerhardus Jorgensen here. Jorgensen still close to Bob Cohen, who maybe doesn't have the outright sort of one-lap pace, but seems to be placing his car very, very well. He doesn't seem to shy away from a little bit of racecraft.
No, and that's important here, because you've got to be able to battle with drivers around you. If you find yourself unable to go out there and really race, all you're doing is glorified hot lapping. So it is important to refine your battling skills and to make sure that you've got the ability to go out there and really strike while the iron is hot. And speaking of hot, here comes the look from Jorgensen, who sees a very early defense by Bob Cohen, taking a very, very protractedly wide line out around the track to try and not get overtaken. But as he catches himself up over the curb, Gerhardus Jorgensen will just fly his way around, and that is as easy as you like there, just because of the car placement. You looked around at Bob Cohen, he was overly defensive into a number of the corners and effectively hoisted himself upon his own petard and lost the place.
I have to Google exactly what being hoisted upon one's own petard means, because I know the saying, but I'll learn its meaning later on. Like I talked about, the racecraft there for Bob Cohen, just not afraid to place his car defensively like that, but having to go that defensive that early let you know that Gerhardus Jorgensen had an almighty run that he took to an advantage, nose in front around the outside, was able to break very deep in that position and just swoop around the outside. So just great racing between Gerhardus Jorgensen and Bob Cohen on that account. Things are accordioning closer together inside of the top four. So Russ Addy gets closer to race leader Todd Scholl, but Greg Seitz gets closer to third placeman Roberto Catalano, who's got some fans from Italia in the chat as well. So I'm weak on that language, but he's got some fans, and they'll be very vocal, no doubt, if Roberto Catalano can stay in a podium spot.
Well, that's what he'll want to do. Of course, we have seen from Catalano that he can go a bit hot and cold, as he very nearly got hit there from behind by Greg Seitz. And there is the likes of Bob Cohen, who is trying to deal with Gerhardus Jorgensen again. And there behind that is Franz Josef Sturm trying to get past Mike McCormick. And McCormick there in the number 99 car, Club Texas, isn't going to move an inch out there at this point. He is very content with where he's placing the car. He's holding himself quite nicely, and at 6 laps through nearly 7 laps, they're only 11 seconds off of this race lead, so this hasn't gone fully away from them. They can still definitely pick up some advantages as they enter the arena once again, and that very narrow section. Now, this strip of track has been largely unchanged around this circuit. I would have said not since the 1960s have we seen too much of a move around this circuit for the arena section. It is very much part of the fabric of this place.
If you believe my favorite website that has all the historic layouts of all the racetracks, it looks like the Sachs curve and related bits came in 1966, before there were any chicanes out on the big loop, before the pit lane had a pit wall. It was there. So it looks a bit 1966, much wider. This is the brand new, since 2002 part of the racetrack, the Parabolica. Since 2002. It's not actually that brand new, but I remember when it was new.
I think we all do. It's part of my first racing game I ever found myself on was F1 Career Challenge, and of course you go from 99 to 02, and so randomly you get to the final season of the career mode, and then suddenly Hockenheimring is completely changed. You're like, what's this? What's going on here? And it's definitely very different to what it was. It's a completely different challenge. You've turned a track like this from a high-speed thrill ride where you've got basically 3 chicanes. I'll race you out to the Ost curve and back, into what is a much more modern style circuit where you've got to really dance your way and navigate around this track. And this was one of the first few introductions that we got to the work of Herman Tilke as a track designer. Of course, we had Sepang, which I think was his magnum opus in terms of the greatest circuit that he's possibly built. But this sort of redesign that you see here, this is where you started to get an understanding of what he's looking for in terms of a track and challenge, because it's got elements of where you've got that ability to attack, that ability to overtake, but it's also got that high downforce feel where you are going to have to work at every corner because nothing's truly quite going to go 100% your way on any given lap.
The long straight into big braking zone hairpin was very much a Tilke addition to this racetrack. I'm with you, Sepang. Very good. Asian Le Mans series going there shortly, which is going to be must watch for me, with prototypes, GT cars and all racing to get a spot into next year's 24 Hours of Le Mans. And the old circuit here, it's almost a little bit like Le Mans. Very long straight chicane, very long straight chicane, like going down the Mulsanne, but just folded around on itself.
Yeah, it definitely does have that feel of being one of those circuits you look at. It's nothing compared to what it first raced like in 32 to 37 in the what was known as the Hockenheimer Dreieck circuit, where you raced literally, I think, from town to town over towards Offenheim, down along the Kreisstrasse, and then over through Schwetzinger and then effectively joining up using the Kesselschreck curve back onto the main circuit that we know and love. And of course that run is where we get basically the track today, pretty much joined right up here, and is one of those unique circuits that you find it's very similar to the likes of a Magny-Cours, for example, that you know, you find a racetrack and it's almost like you stumble on it like an oasis. You're not quite sure you're going to find a race circuit here, and you almost question why there's a race circuit here, and then you realize it's a great race circuit here, as here comes Greg Seitz looking for second position on Russ Addy, proving that this will be a great circuit for him if he does decide to go and make that move. And he finds himself now just the 1.2 seconds behind your race leader Todd Scholl, as he's now in second place.
This is what we expected from Greg Seitz. It's what he likes to do in the second race. If he's wrapped up a good result in race 1, he'll have a little bit more fun in race 2, having started out in 9th position very much on purpose. Now up into second, just 1.2 behind Todd Scholl. This is also an opportunity for Russ Addy, though, because if he can hook just a little bit of slipstream before Greg Seitz gets too far away, it'll help him get close to Todd Scholl. What he'd been doing is he had been closing in on Todd Scholl. Gap was down from sort of 2.5 to sort of 1.5, but the problem was that Greg Seitz was even quicker. There's always a bigger fish. So even if Greg Seitz gets to the lead of the race here, he could bring Russ Addy a little closer to Todd Scholl, and Russ Addy could improve on his 3rd place from race 1 with a 2nd place in race 2. It's an interesting scoring format in 60 plus racing adventures. We have 2 races but the points you take to the championship is your best result of either race. So you're always looking to improve in race 2 on what you did in race 1. And if race 1 wasn't good, a good result in race 2 can still carry good points for you into the championship.
Yeah, and those points, I think, are really important when you consider that you're trying to build up over the course of the season. This is the magnum opus. This is what you get to at the end of the season and go, right, these are how many points I have and I have taken away. And when I get to the next season, it's either I want to get more or everyone wants to get more, or I'm trying to consolidate exactly where I am with what I'm doing. Russ Addy right now will be thinking, well, with the way that I've driven here in this final rounds of the season, I'll be taking some lovely points away, and I might be jumping 1, 2, maybe even 3 championship positions and be happy with it. Wide goes Todd Scholl, starting to feel the pressure of Greg at this moment in time here on lap 10, and this is a very scary sight when you enter the arena, knowing that you've got the quickest driver in the 60 plus racing adventures here, the champion right behind you, and Greg here in the 774 notices that Todd is really trying to drive fast now. He's trying to drive away. It's almost a case of run as fast as you can, because there will be 8 laps for Greg to decide, you know what, I can play with my food and decide when I want to make this move.
Once again, Greg Seitz has got the fastest lap of the race. Top 4 looks pretty interesting. Seitz closes in on Scholl. Russ Addy got a nasty ride across the curb a lap ago, dropped him back just a tiny bit closer to Roberto Catalano, who's still managing good speed, but this is the opportunity for Greg Seitz. Great speed in the slipstream, pulls out 3 kilometers an hour, 4 kilometers an hour faster. Like a walking pace advantage, just walking towards the race lead, absolutely level, and he's got the inside. Todd Scholl rolls out of the throttle a little bit, so Greg Seitz can get towards the apex, get to power, and with the lead of the race, with still 9 laps to go, I think it's the rest of the podium positions that are going to be so interesting to watch. It looks like Russ Addy's got a little bit more pace than Todd Scholl. It looks like Roberto Catalano has settled in, and he's finding a little bit of pace as well. So just a little mistake from anyone up front, and he's right back in contention for the podium. And then other battles through the field, like Bob Cohen cannot stop battling the Anglo-Dutch drivers of Barry Hills and Gerhardus Jorrison either.
No, he can't, and I think that when you sat back down in the pack, you got a lot more work to do. But Greg Seitz then moving up into the race lead, he did so as easy as you like. He did it without any fuss, took the prime place to get the move done, and did it with minimal risk. And now he can go from his 9th place start here in this race and try and run away. The one thing he'll be looking at is, would this have been a little bit harder for him to do if Ragnar Wisloff didn't have that spin on the opening corner of this race? He has got to where he has on merit, and now as he sits down and has that open track in front of him, as he has done so many times before, he's already pulled that gap out to a second, and Todd Scholl's looking behind at Russ Addy, who is looking to go to 2nd place.
Welcome to RaceSpot Literary Class. Hoist with his own petard is a phrase from a speech in William Shakespeare's Hamlet that has become proverbial. The phrase's meaning is that a bomb maker is blown off the ground by his own bomb and indicates an ironic reversal or poetic justice. So I'll be using that more. Thank you, Jake Sperry. And we have great racing still to decide these podium positions, as Greg Seitz might race off into the sunset of the final round and into his glorious championship era.
Yeah, he's certainly driven in a way that gets himself away, but now for Todd Scholl, he is very much in the defensive pact at this stage, and he has got to try and hold with everything he's got as Russ Addy shadows him through the Sachs curve, and now looks for that drive here across this tiny chicane which connects the circuit. You're often dancing through this section. You're always looking around and thinking, what more do I have to do to try and keep myself in check? But the run out to the final corner towards the Nord curve of turn 1 is not really an overtaking place. It's a one-line suits all corner with an anti-cut curb on the inside and a mile of curb on the outside that wants to unsettle the car into the Einfahrt Parabolica, and this is where you want to start making the move. That's the corner you want to get correct, and I tell you what, Russ Addy's in range and he will pounce, and this might be a move for 2nd.
It's going to do similar to what Greg Seitz did. So for second place, they're side by side with the driver on the inside fractionally ahead, heading to the biggest braking zone on the racetrack. They stay side by side for too long, cost themselves some time. There's Roberto Catalano, and it's a poor exit. Todd Scholl is very tight, got some wheel spin. Roberto Catalano can smell a podium once again. God, Sorensen and Bob Cohen were even quicker than these guys on the last lap as well. So it depends where you lose time, how tough you treat your tyres, and if you have any little mistakes. And I think Todd Scholl, from having a great little lead earlier on in this race, being a very clear head in the opening few laps, is getting just a tiny bit rattled.
Yeah, it's very easy to do, to get rattled. It's all about the mental game, and if you suddenly realise that after leading this race that you don't have pace, it does become a bit frightening here for Todd Scholl, because he was looking at victory about, I don't know, 3-4 laps ago. Now he might just be looking at, well, can I even salvage a podium out of it? And he needs to try and find his speed, and he needs to find it pretty soon. Seitz has done a 29.8 on that last lap. Addy a 30.8. By comparison, it was a 31.2 by Roberto Catalano, and Todd Scholl on a 131.9. That pace won't cut the mustard.
So interesting to see how all of this is going to play out. Some other battles through the field, like El Setzer, David Bradley, Eugene Clark, also trying to settle for some spots just outside of the top 10. Scholl under pressure again. Catalano further back than the drivers who've passed him in previous laps. So he can just have to wait. It lets Scholl take a normal line through Spitzkara for the first time in a little while. And he does it very, very cleanly indeed. So if he can settle for the next couple of laps, this can stand an opportunity. But what he has lost is the slipstream of Russ Addy or Roberto Catalano. Every time on the Parabolica, we'll have those extra couple of kilometres an hour, really pressuring Todd Scholl to make a clean run through Einfahrt Parabolica. Just as I said that, I think Russ Addy's had a little mistake, dropped back towards slipstream range of Todd Scholl. Second, third, fourth will be a monumental battle. But Greg Seitz motoring away to an even bigger advantage than the 1.9 seconds he won race 1 by.
He'll certainly be hoping that he can find that move and jump up, especially with the amount of laps that we've got running out here in this race. You've got to be so switched on to any small move that can possibly be found, as we find ourselves pretty much sat in the corridor, in that western corridor of Germany here. We're about halfway between Frankfurt and Stuttgart out here in terms of where our track is, as it sits not a million miles away from the big river of the Rhine, and of course the Rhineland-Palatinate, and the section of Germany known as the Hessen that they run through. The Hockenheimring is just a stone's throw away from that. I'd say about a couple of miles away from the Rhine River itself, and the work that is done often around this track is wonderful to see. But we get that note that Todd Scholl here has just lost that place to Catalano, and again it is a case of as simple as you like, but that was just a case of commanding the circuit on the inside to the point where Catalano threw the car into the corner, saw the puff of smoke on the inside, and the amount of room given was a little bit too much. Now, after the spin earlier on, there's Eugene. Whoa, that's a big off for Earl Setzer there. That's a unique off for Earl Setzer.
I think Setzer's got some dramas going on here, technical perhaps, because he's stopped there. He's battling side by side, and then he's just pulled off. What?
I wonder if his wheel's fallen off his desk.
Huh. Well, it'd be the point where you need a lot of steering lock there going around the outside of someone else. So odd things happen. Bob Cohen, they've just got a little bit of lap traffic here. I think it's Jerry Kerr trying to stay out of the way of Bob Cohen and Greg Garris battling for 7th and 8th. Let's take a look here for Setzer, and maybe
there's obviously some wheel movement there.
Did you hear something from them?
Oh, I didn't.
There was some radio at the time, but I didn't catch exactly what was said.
I think they were battling at that point, and I didn't quite catch what was being said there. But for Earl Setzer, I think that's more of a moment when you go through the corner and suddenly there's just nothing, just completely lost the drive, completely couldn't find a way to go through. We'll take one more look. So it's taking that wide line and then just straightens out the car and pulls an emergency stop off the racing line.
You can get very firmly clamped wheels, bundles, other things at the race spot shop. So maybe have a look there, or he had screens went black or something. I've heard of some people have technical issues when they reach really high force feedback things, and then maybe there's like electrical interference when they draw down that much power, and it like causes their monitors to go black or give them a technical problem. So there are so many little things that can happen like that. Field's unfortunately spread out just a tiny bit. Greg Seitz, with 3 laps to go, has a 5-second lead over Russ Addy, who's just pulling away from Roberto Catalano, just pulling away from Todd Scholl. Having come together, the positions are changed inside of the top 4, and now they're stretching out a little bit in their natural order. You've got to look other places for battles through the field. Jerry Kerr pitsing in, potentially with some damage. Not with a black flag, from what I can tell.
No, I don't think it looks like a black flag for Jerry either in the 199 as he was going around the circuit. It didn't look like he'd had any troubles at all, but I think he was just trying to stay out of the way. May have even had a little bit too little fuel in the car for him, and he hasn't, over the course of this race, copied what's on the front of his car that we had a very nice look at. He hasn't gone Bosch yet.
Bish, bash, bosh. More like what Greg Seitz is doing, I think. So much German involvement in car production, motorsports, racing history. So you see so many brands represented around here, and it's sort of a home for a few of them in motorsport. I think DTM used to come here like 3 times a season at some point. It was one of the tracks they couldn't get enough of, and it was very closely situated, not only to a lot of population in Germany, like you were talking about, but a lot of the teams, the fans, and the companies involved.
And it goes to show you as well with the layouts, what they had. They created their own DTM version of the national layout, where you jump into the corner here with the national layout on iRacing. It's very much a protracted move over to the right and take the corner. With what they do with the DTM layout, there is that tiny patch of grass there you could see at the back. They actually take the right around that patch of grass. That's what the national layout was in DTM. Oh, well, you got a 5-second lead, and you're Greg Seitz, and you decide, I'm going to stick the tail out through the final corner and just put on a little bit of a show. This is brilliant.
Yeah, he's the only driver who's gone underneath 1 minute 30 in these racing conditions with the fastest lap of 129.9. He's not going to better that on this lap, I don't think, but lap 17 was the fastest lap of the race last lap. Roberto Catalano, a few of these drivers just trying to work their way through a tiny bit of lap traffic here. So Russ Addy did it. Roberto Catalano's just got past. Todd Scholl and Barry Hills need to do so. And Barry Hills has been a tiny bit quicker than Todd Scholl, so he's not been out of this picture either as we're about to start the final lap of the race with Greg Seitz. He's really taking it in for that victory lap, the season 32 champion.
Yeah, and that season 32 champion has just ticked over for that final lap of the race, and you can see here that gap now nearly 7 seconds here at the front. It has been a wonderful bit of driving where he has just been able to waltz away in the second half of this race, knowing that Russ Addy can't hold his pace, Roberto Catalano can't hold his pace, and everyone just in a line at the moment trying to avoid any troubles. But speaking of troubles, I think Mike McCormick's gone around on the last lap.
A few drivers have gone past him. Franz Josef Sturm, Ragnar Wisloff even, who from that turn 1 dramas has recovered to 10th position now. A lot of time lost. He had to take that, had that damage, had to go through pit lane, and so that dropped him an incredible amount. Ragnar Wisloff's back into 10th. For the last time around a few of these corners, Greg Seitz is leading. There's Mike McCormick, way too much apex curb. Just managed to keep it off the wall, so if any damage was done, it was done by that incredibly large orange dome at the apex of turn 1 and bouncing across that in these low-riding Formula cars. Well, Greg Seitz, what can be said? No pole positions for him in the final round of the championship, but he's come from 3rd to win race 1. He's going to come from 9th on the grid to win race number 2 and make himself an absolute legend of 60-plus racing adventures. A few drivers have won multiple championships. Stefan Rösken, Russ Addy, Ragnar Wisloff, but now Greg Seitz is a multi-time champion across different models of car in 60-plus racing adventures. Truly one of the greats of the long storied history of 60-plus racing adventures that now completes its 32nd season.
To do it in one car is one thing, to do it across multiple cars is very much another. It's all about adaptability, and he's shown that here with the way that he's been going about. We do look further back to the likes of Peter Hallström, for example, and John Morgan, who will be the final 2 cars on the leading lap, making their way over towards the line. And it is a season where you look and you say it has been dominant at the front, but this is the sort of series that you can't do without the drivers who are towards the back, who are still trying to, even in the 60-plus era, trying to learn and develop and gain their skills and continue to refine what they've got. And drivers like Peter Hallström are really important. Up 4 today, ahead of drivers who are a lap down. That's a big smile on my face if ever I saw one. I always want to beat my number.
Is it double digits normally?
When I'm racing, which is never on my nice Xbox controller, yeah, it normally is double digits for me.
So I think we've almost had everyone finish. I've not done any iRacing officials in quite a while. So Greg Seitz, the win and the fastest lap, and he sets it on the final lap too. Take a look at that, a 129.7. So he improved multiple tenths on what the best was, saving his best for last to win by 7.8 seconds from Russ Addy on the podium again with a 1 improved position. And Roberto Catalano takes 3rd place. He started 4th on the grid. Great gains for him. Todd Scholl, Barry Hills, Gerhard Sjörosen, Bob Cohen, Greg Garris, and Franz Josef Stumm with Ragnar Wisloff as the top 10. And then it's Mike McCormick, Eugene Clark, David Bradley, Peter Hallström, and John Morgan, the last drivers on the lead lap. A few more wounded here right at the end. So a lap down, the Earl Setzer, Ulf Olsen, Richard Coulomb, and Jerry Kerr. Well, Jake Sperry had to install Hockenheimring. I wouldn't begrudge Ulf Olsen for uninstalling it after today. And Mike Grandy did not an early retirement after his contacts with Ulf Olsen. We can get to some of our podium once again. Who's standing by from 60-plus racing adventures?
Hey guys.
Welcome back. I think that you got to say, Russ, you're a bit of a spotlight demon, I guess is the right way to say it, because you got yourself twice on the podium, 5th to 2nd. Talk us through the start, because it would have been crazy seeing the smoke screen going through the Nord curve.
Yeah, I got handed that one with Ragnar's spin, which is very uncharacteristic of him. So that helped right from the start, but of course you can't stop Greg coming from behind.
Well, you can't stop Greg, and that's just the story of the season, really. But how did you settle down into that rhythm? Because it looked like Todd, for example, struggled a little bit the moment he got overtaken. His confidence took a dent, and then it seemed like you went through, and then Roberto behind you went through. Just talk us through the process of dealing with Todd over the course of the mid-stage of the race.
I was creeping up on him. I wasn't gaining too much. I think that when Greg went by him, that cost him a little time, and that allowed me to gain on him. So then he probably started looking in the mirror more, and that was that. I tend to do well with being overtaken. I give it up easy where it makes sense. So I think that hurt Todd.
Well, sometimes it happens, and there's not much you can do about it. But talk us through your season. You've already been a champion here at the 60 Plus Racing Adventures League on multiple occasions. You look at what you do and the sense of camaraderie that you build in this season. How do you look to go and reach those heights once again, looking into season 33?
Well, I think honestly, it'll be really hard to get another championship with Greg and Ragnar. I mean, it's a good competition, and honestly, fun racing and hard racing is really the best thing. I know Greg likes to win, but if you're way ahead, it's not as much fun as if you're battling the whole way, which I really enjoy.
Well, you're in the thick of it, and you've had yourself some brilliant battling over the course of today. 2 podiums here today, a third and a second for Russ Addy.
That's right. A lot of champagne. And also I have to thank Stumi. Okay, guys, I will see you next time we broadcast, I hope.
It sounds like it, Russ.
Okay. See you guys.
Try to get through a little more of our podium. I'm in the wrong place to see who's standing by.
I don't
Literally
think we have
just
anyone
was.
standing by.
Russ Addy. Greg Seitz knows where to find us, but he's probably absolutely drowning in champagne at the moment. And Berto Catalano, don't know, because I've never spoken to him before, if he's confident for an English interview or if he even knows that we want to speak with him. So we've already chatted quickly with Greg Seitz after race 1, and he's probably right off to celebrate. This is the season 32 champion of 60 plus racing adventures. A long history, but the first with the Super Formula Light car is in the books, and it's won by Greg Seitz. It's been a delight to bring you live coverage with RaceSpotTV of 60 plus racing adventures of season 32. Been David Haynes with Jake Sperry and Hugo Lewis for this one from the Hockenheimring, as we once again extend our congratulations to the championship organisers for another great season, and to Greg Seitz for the trophy.